The genre of first-person shooters have hit an impasse in terms of creativity and originality as of recently. Over the past 3 to 4 years, we haven't truly gotten anything that stood out, and those that did never gained the success it really needed to appease the masses. We were always quote-unquote blessed with an annual Call of Duty release. And while that helped subdue the fans that wanted a mindless shooter, it was never anything that they hadn't seen before, with things like hold and defend a position for a set time, or a linear turret section, and even when it was something entirely new, the next game abused the mechanic to death and already made it outdated. I.e., the wall running system and futuristic setting for multiplayer only. Then there are the games that, like I previously mentioned, had enough bullets to go around, but were overshadowed by the next AAA FPS. Games like Titanfall and its sequel were innovative yet heavily underrated titles that were never truly given a chance due to them being released in the middle of a major Call of Duty or Battlefield release. But despite all of that, the game was met with overwhelming praise from the small crowd that actually considered playing it. But it wasn't always like this. A little company by the name of id Software was hoping to make a name for themselves in the 90s after their previous game, Wolfenstein 3D, was such a hit. They hoped to make it a bigger and better Wolfenstein, and to make that happen, they brought out the big guns. Doom was released in 1993 and was a commercial success. More people had Doom installed on their computer than they had Windows 95. The game set the standard for first-person shooters for years to come, and it was on top of their game for quite a while. Even after Doom was said and done, they made sure the competition was quaking in their boots with their next game. But of course, with humble beginnings comes a sequel and successors to follow. Doom 2 did everything that the first did better, and then some. What followed was a less than stellar resurgence. Doom 3 was much slower than its predecessors in some regards, and while it was met with praise, it is regarded as the black sheep of the franchise with an atmosphere similar to that of games like Fear or Dead Space. It was in a tight space after all was said and done, and they wanted to make sure that the next game could cause a rise in popularity for their types of games again. So they took a trip back, and tried to see if they could reignite the spark with Wolfenstein. The game was good, but not good enough, so they went back to the drawing board, and started development for the next Doom game, which took almost 8 years to develop. But seeing as how every game before it was just good or average, at best really, could lightning really strike twice? Yeah, I'd say so. Doom 2016 nearly replicated the first game's success, with it being a reboot and how much it stood out from today's crowd of shooters. The game was fast, furious, and surprisingly wasn't dated in most regards, as it took inspiration from a slew of mechanics from newer entries of video games as a whole. The feeling of the original games but modernized was almost too good to be true, but thankfully it wasn't, and we have game directors Hugo Martin and Marty Stratton to thank for that. Movement and shooting were still the main focus of survival, and the glory kill mechanic was a helpful addition to emphasizing the game's tone. You weren't running away and hiding behind cover, you were coming at those demons full force, chainsaw in hand, and ready to rip and tear. Critics enjoyed the breath of fresh air that was Doom, and it brought enough to the table to keep people coming back. Again, like every great first piece, it was bound to have a sequel, and as almost as if it were Bill Murray and Groundhog Day, history repeated itself.
The BFG 10,000, designed by Dr. Samuel Hayden as part of the Anti-Demonic Defense Grid.
I understand. Searching the coordinates to the BFG 10,000 now.
You can't just shoot a hole into the surface of Mars.
12 seconds later.
Doom Eternal took everything Doom 2016 was and made it better. From guns to guts, the game was a swift and smooth upgrade in every regard. More movement options like the ability to dash, the shotgun is the first weapon the game starts you with, there is a laser sword, super shotgun has a hook that can grapple you to enemies, which has a lot more variety this time around, and don't even get me started on the music. The story is fairly simple. You play as the Doomslayer, and are sent out to save the world from the demonic invasion held by the Conmaker, a cybernetically enhanced demon who was originally of Sentinel blood. The game's story is split between more practical means like cutscenes and visual storytelling, and dozens upon dozens of lore in the form of codex entries that the truly engaged can take the time to read. On top of that, the story also elaborates more on the origins of the Slayer, like how he got his strength and enhanced speed. This is a very neat addition in my opinion and allows us to understand just what we're dealing with and just how much of an imposing force the player is as the Slayer. The gameplay is where the game shines, as that is what made 2016 so memorable. A game should be a game first and a story second. The game has its moments where it lets the player take in the sights and sounds of the world it has built, and it looks astounding visually. And the scope is also heightened to a degree that its predecessor pales in comparison to. Along with that came the introduction of several new mechanics. The dash is almost like a get out of jail free card or even a way to close the distance between the Slayer and his prey. He also dons an equipment launcher that shoots grenades and ice bombs as well as doubles as a flamethrower. The new Blood Punch mechanic is a very powerful melee that can decimate demons in a single dosage, and several weapons return as well with a series of new upgrades. The pacing is very quick and to the point, and makes sure that you truly feel like the Doomslayer not only with the weapons, but with the level design as well, always taking the form of arenas and mini-gauntlets, putting you to a series of situations with a variety of enemies. Some new and old, but the main focus is with the Marauder, a former Sentinel Knight like the Slayer who was converted by the Conmaker. Imagine fighting yourself, but with an axe and dogs. The Marauder makes you work for your kills as he has a series of counters depending on where you are in comparison to him, but he, along with every other enemy in the game, has a weak spot or moment where you can strike. Shooting off the arm cannon of a Makibus or lobbing a grenade into the mouth of a Keiko demon will render them defenseless or make them less effective in combat. Now, much like the length of this paragraph, this seems like a lot to remember and can tend to be overwhelming. And you're not wrong. In certain situations, just shooting the enemy with whatever you got is usually the most simple approach, but the weak spots reward the ones who would want a little more out of their game. Remembering that crucial moment when to light an enemy on fire and chainsaw them just to get rewarded with a flurry of armor and ammo is very satisfying. Like I said however, these are optional but are more effective than just wasting all your ammo on one demon when a well-placed headshot could have done the trick. Did you know? When making the music for Doom 2016, the composer, Mick Gordon, actually used recordings of a chainsaw and a synthesizer for the main theme. Talk about heavy metal. For Eternal, the music is ramped up even more so as we come to witness the full potential of the Slayer as he takes on enemies from a simple imp to tyrants at least 50 foot high. The build up before a giant fight is very apparent when you take your first steps into the room that is soon to be filled with the blood and brains of your enemies. And that is what this is all about. Not only was Doom Eternal a worthy successor, it was a rank above that and everything people who enjoyed 2016 wanted. More demons, more glory kills, more weapons, and more Mick Gordon. In the end, you fight through waves of demons and slay the Icon of Sin, another returning enemy from the originals, and walk off like the force to be reckoned with that you are. And then you realize, you're more than a mere man, you're more than a god, you're more than any of that. You are the